Today is April 2nd, 2025, and I'm feeling a little anxious. My name's T. Glenn, and this is Conversations with T. We all know that the digital revolution has enhanced our lives for the better, but served up some unintended consequences. The speed of digital life makes us think that we can do more in less time. But isn't that supposed to save us time, give us more free time? Mastering technology is like a dopamine hit, but it also comes with isolation. Ask any coder or gamer. Additionally, social media in all its forms leads to chronic comparison and impossible expectations. So what can we do about it? Who's to blame? I don't have time to care because there's too much trauma to deal with. So where do we start? Today, I am turning to a licensed counselor named Megan Townsend, who has a local practice called the Oaks Counseling Group here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Hey, Megan.
Hey, T. How are you?
Good. How are you?
You know, feeling a little nervous.
I understand.
Yeah.
I definitely understand. I appreciate you being here. What are we talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about anxiety.
It's a huge deal. Now, I know a little bit about anxiety, but we'll get into that in a minute. You're a professional. What credentials do you have?
Yes. So I have my master's degree in rehabilitation and counseling, and I have my LPCA, which is my state license for licensed professional counselors, and I'm finishing up my 2 years of being an associate, which just means that I'm under supervision of another seasoned counselor.
Gotcha.
And so I'll be fully licensed in May, so 1 month to go.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes.
Well, congratulations. I can't wait to hear about it.
Yes. I also have my NCC, which is a national counselor certificate. So basically, I'm just nationally recognized as a counselor as well.
Okay. Well, very nice. That's a lot. That's a lot of credentials. I'm all in. You're a professional. And you have your own practice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So I was saying earlier, I have an experience with anxiety. Mm-hmm. In a former job, I was walking down the hall first thing in the morning, and I've started to feel like my vision was closing in on me, and almost like vertigo. Mm-hmm. And I thought I was going to pass out. There was, at the time, I would have sworn there was nothing on my mind. Like I wasn't walking and talking stress. Is that anxiety?
Well, it depends. So I think everybody has experienced anxiety to some degree or another. But what we're finding, especially with the rise of social media and self-information and self-diagnosing, is where there's a blurred line between anxiety and clinical anxiety. So from what you shared with me and the very little information I have, it sounds like, yes, you probably did experience some anxiety in that moment. However, would it be a clinical diagnosis of anxiety? I'm not so sure.
Incidentally, how is a panic attack different from anxiety in your opinion?
Yes. So a panic attack is typically short duration, heightened emotion, heightened sensations, fast beating heart, sweating, maybe you're feeling flushed, nauseous, blurred vision, but it typically lasts anywhere from 30 seconds to maybe 2 minutes. So it's very quick lasting. Anxiety is more of a sensation that you're going to be feeling over a duration of time. When we start looking at whether it's clinical or non-clinical is where we're really paying attention to the duration of that anxiety.
Well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
From your standpoint, what is clinical anxiety?
Yes, so let's talk first about what is regular anxiety. How about?
Okay.
Is that
we'll go backwards.
Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do it backwards.
Okay.
Because I think almost everybody will say they feel anxiety.
Yeah.
So what are they talking about?
So anxiety is actually a built-in survival mechanism for us. So anxiety is our body's natural response to stress or danger. It's kind of our alert system that we have within our body. And so anytime we sense danger or a potential danger, our body goes into a fight or flight mode, a stress response, and that's when we begin to feel, oh, my heartbeat's quickened a little bit, I'm feeling a little nervous, feeling a little anxious, and it's our body's way of trying to protect us and lead us out of danger.
Would that state be considered dysregulation? If you're feeling that, you're sort of dysregulated?
You're feeling a little dysregulated. You're not kind of working within your normal means, I would say, your baseline.
Okay, so a person has a massive exam tomorrow.
Yes.
And they've studied, and maybe one person told them who had that exam last year, it's hard. So now they can't sleep well, they're stressed out.
They're feeling anxiety, for sure, yeah. And they could feel anxiety the entire week leading up to this exam, and it still wouldn't be clinical anxiety.
Okay.
Yeah.
So dysregulation, fight or flight, wanting to protect yourself, wanting to sort of get out of something is normal. It's a normal condition for us. But that version of anxiety is not necessarily a diagnosis.
Correct.
So then what is clinical?
Yes. So we look at a lot of things, but three main things we look at when it comes to diagnosing clinical anxiety is the intensity of the anxiety, the duration of the anxiety, and then the impairment of anxiety.
Okay, will you take us through some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So intensity would be, I have heightened anxiety about school or an exam to the point of I can't even get to school because I am so anxious. My anxiety is so high, I'm nauseous all the time, maybe even to the point of throwing up every morning because I'm so scared to go to school. I avoid school, so I stop going to school. The duration is this has been happening for weeks, months, typically 6 months at least is what we're looking for. And then with duration and intensity comes, is this impairing your day-to-day life? So I'm so anxious that I'm making myself physically sick. It has been happening for 6 months and I'm not going to school. Therefore, I'm failing my classes. I'm at risk of having to repeat the grade that I'm in because I'm not showing up to school. Daily impairment.
Wow, that 6 months is a long time to be. So someone could be, impaired in terms of they don't want to go to school tomorrow because they have a big test. That anxiety freaks them out. They go to school, they bomb the test because they were too anxious, they were too out of their mind, like in their head. And does it snowball into them not having the resilience the next time?
It could, yes. So that is a great example. So either a student is going to bounce back from that exam and say, okay, I'm going to study differently. I'm going to study maybe a little bit longer, study harder, change up my methods, and kind of bounce back from that pretty quickly, and that would be resilience. However, on the other hand, it could lead to more anxiety. I'm a failure. I can't do this. This class is too hard. Therefore, I'm anxious about studying. I'm going to avoid studying, and now it snowballs into more anxiety.
Gotcha. It's hard for me to believe, anecdotally speaking, that school is harder today than it was when I was going through it because we didn't have computers.
Yeah.
We couldn't look anything up, and if the book we needed at the library was checked out, we had to wait. But today you can get anything you want anytime. But it's still, there's more anxiety present, it feels like, than there was back when I was young. I can't say that for sure, but it feels that way. So you've, in your journey to be a professional, you've worked, you've sort of done work in a practicum scenario, like where you worked to get hours and to learn the trade, and you have your practice. What forms in all of this time, what forms does anxiety take sort of broadly speaking? What do you see?
Yes, it's interesting. In my practicum and internship, I work with a very different demographic. I was in a substance abuse agency, whereas now I'm private practice working primarily with adolescents. The funny thing is if you're in the field or you know anything about addiction, typically someone who has an addiction or suffers from addiction is equivalent to an adolescent. And so the anxiety that's presented is very similar. A lot to do with comparison, expectation, pressure that they're receiving from external sources, maybe even internal sources that they're kind of putting this pressure on themselves. But a lot of it comes from social dynamics.
For adults, addicts, and children.
And children, yep.
That's hard. That's hard to take in, that correlation. That's pretty neat. I mean, it's neat from the point of view of that across the spectrum we're all suffering in ways that are similar.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine that adults have the agency, the wisdom, maybe the life experience, that if they feel anxiety, whether it be small or crippling, they know who to go to. They can maybe log on to an online service where they can talk, or they have a friend they're comfortable with, a loved one. But why is it harder to help children, your own children, than it is to help yourself?
I think from the perspective of a parent, I think when we see our children suffering with anxiety, depression, anything, struggling, oftentimes we can self-assign blame. And so then it becomes, I've not done something or I have done something to cause this. And it becomes hard to maybe offer compassion because you're feeling a little bit guilty. And so instead of addressing it, you avoid addressing it. I think it can also be challenging because with children and adolescents, treatment typically takes longer because it takes longer to build rapport and trust with a counselor and a therapist. Children process in a very different way than adults do. So it's less talk therapy and more experiential things happening. And so sometimes as a caregiver, I have noticed caregivers will stop treatment or pull out of treatment because they're not seeing results right away. And so the duration can be challenging. I think, too, a lot of times it can be easy to send our child to therapy, hoping that that will be the solution versus trying to also gain skills and tools ourselves. And so actually recently at the Oaks, we've added a parent coach because we have found when a child comes in for therapy, we have seen tremendous results when the parent is also receiving coaching or therapy or something to be able to kind of work alongside their child.
Yeah, the parent has to do the work too.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're saying, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're saying that's hard because they believe the story they tell themselves is they may have caused this, and so it becomes about them and not the child.
It could, yeah, it is, yep. Or it can be on the opposite end of this is just my child's issue and it's not my issue, so it's just solely them, when really it's gonna be a dual situation where both child and parent are gonna need to walk this process out together.
Because they're all part of one dynamic that's complicated.
Yeah,
right.
Yep. The other thing I see, which logistically, scheduling is very hard with children because they're in school all day, where an adult may be able to pop onto a telehealth call during lunch break or can come before work or after work. And so children and adolescents can only come after school hours, which are short in the world of work. And kids are in theater, they're in soccer, they're in baseball, they're in dance. And so trying to find the time to get them into therapy can be challenging if it's not a priority.
Not to mention, we haven't mentioned the S word, which is stigma.
Yeah.
Now, stigma can work both ways. And I want to see if you can talk about this a little bit. Obviously, if you have to leave soccer practice and go to a therapy session, that may be a challenging thing to explain to your friend group. But there are people also out there who almost want a diagnosis. How would you talk about stigma?
Yeah, it has been a very interesting paradigm, I think, with the rise of social media, because it's very easy to access social media and see everybody's in therapy or everybody has this diagnosis or whatever it may be, and you can kind of see it all out there. And so now all of a sudden I've got all of these things, and therefore to fit in, I need to have a diagnosis too. And so I've seen actually social media play the good and bad with stigma, right? It has helped to destigmatize therapy and getting help. You see more people talking about it openly. And so I have found a lot of teenagers come in and they're like, I don't care if my friends know I'm here. On the flip side, I've seen a lot of people say, well, I saw on Instagram that I've got this, this, and this, therefore I've got PTSD. And we talk through it, and as we talk through, it's like, well, not quite. But let's talk about what's going on,
Gotcha. Yeah, that goes to the self-diagnosis piece.
Yeah.
And I remember a long time ago, a doctor friend of mine said, whatever you do, stay off WebMD. And those resources are valuable in their own way, but it doesn't define the condition you're living in. It's more general and interesting. What would you tell parents who are struggling with an anxious child? Something, maybe like 3 steps, like a roadmap. Okay, so you've got a parent, their child says they have anxiety, and the parent doesn't quite know what to do. What would you tell a parent?
Yeah, great question. I would first tell them to check in with themselves. How are you feeling in this moment? If you're anxious, your child's going to feel more anxious. If you're able to kind of self-regulate, take a minute. So that might look like stepping away for a moment, taking a few breaths yourself, trying to find some grounding and self-regulation for yourself so you can now engage with your child from a regulated state is going to be very important. Fire feeds fire.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So that's similar to like the baby's aware of the parent's mood. So you're suggesting that the parent needs to check in with themselves and make sure they're not adding, they're not causing, or what's going on in their world.
And then very practically, I would say get down on your child's level. So if they're sitting on a couch, sit down next to them. If they're standing, get down on your knees so you're face to face with them, eyes to eyes, so it feels far more equal. And check in with them. Ask them, is there something you need from me right now? Some children might be able to say, yes, I need a hug. Yes, I need you to leave me alone. Yes, I need my stuffed animal. Some children might not know what to say at all and just continue to cry or scream or kind of continue to be dysregulated. And so then I would say offer them some sort of soothing, self-regulating breathing technique, grounding technique. You can find them easily online, just a very quick breathing technique. 3 big deep breaths in and out, some grounding techniques, and do it with your child. So don't just tell them to do it with them. Lead by example, and it might take them a few times to start breathing with you, but you keep doing it and they'll eventually join in and hopefully regulate enough to kind of calm down in whatever situation you're in.
So number 1, check in with yourself. Number 2, check in with your child. And number 3, do something to sort of bring down the temperature of the situation, but do it together. That's really nice.
Yeah, and then I would say once both of you are kind of regulated again, take a break. Go do something else, take your mind off it, and then check back in with your child 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, at the end of the night when you're going to bed. Check back in. Hey, earlier today, this happened. Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to talk about what was going on? And then they'll be in a regulated state and be able to hopefully talk with you a little bit more about what was going on.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Megan, real quick before we go, tell me what your take is on how social media kind of turbocharges anxiety.
Yes, I think social media can be used for good. Overall, I think it does enhance anxiety by creating a game of comparison. You're constantly seeing everybody else's perfectly tailored and curated life that they're sharing, because they're only sharing the good parts. You are seeing the success that people are sharing, so now you're constantly measuring your own success to their success. You have the world at your fingertips, so any symptom that you're already feeling when you're anxious, you can look up, and now you're down a rabbit hole of all other ailments that could be going on with you. You're being flooded with headlines of terrible news all of the time. And so I think it really does turbocharge anxiety.
So you have your friends living their best life.
Yep.
You've got these interestingly slightly deranged people like the Logan Pauls and the Paris Hiltons and the people who live their life on display as influencers. And then you have misinformation or too much information.
Yeah.
It's tough. We live in a tough world. That thank goodness we have folks like you doing the work, helping young people navigate this landscape. I appreciate you. Thanks for being here, Megan.
Thank you for having me, T.
Having a nervous reaction or being anxious is not clinical anxiety. Life is hard. Learning new things can be uncomfortable. But for most of us, we just need practice and a cup of coffee in order to build up that resilience. But for others, not so much. Please look and listen to your loved ones. Don't use yourself as an example of how someone should feel, and don't rely on self-diagnosis and research on the internet. Anxiety, like many other forms of mental conditions, issues, or diagnoses, it's real and punishing. Start with a conversation and end with getting help. I hope Megan has given you a direction today. If you're in the area and need her help, don't hesitate to call her at the Oaks Counseling Group. In the meantime, be kind. And remember that as long as we are one species, we're one love.
Peace.
Nice. That was good.
Yeah.